On Thursday, July 11th, around 8 o'clock, Paola's body was found in an advanced state of decomposition among the undergrowth in Agrarian Islands, Bail Sur in Mexicali. Later, the State Attorney General, Maria Elena Andrade Ramirez, reported that Sergio Daniel N., the Didi driver, is the main suspect in the disappearance and death of Paola Banuelos.
2 years after the high-profile and unfortunate case of Devan and Escobar, today history repeats itself in another corner of the Mexican Republic. Paola Banuelo, 23 years old, went out to have fun with her cousin at a club in her city. She thought it would be safe to order a Didi for the ride home. However, days later, after an exhaustive search, her lifeless body was found showing signs of violence. One of the things that most resembles the case that occurred 2 years ago is the way the young woman decides to go home. According to the mother, Mireya Flores, after the meeting ended, her friends left the place while her cousin waited for her father to pick her up. Paola, meanwhile, requested a Didi as a means of transportation to get home.
Her cousin leaves her, goes with her dad goes for the girl, for her cousin, and my daughter stays there waiting. One day, one of the boys saw that she got into a black Versa.
Unknowingly, she got into the vehicle that would lead her directly to her premature death. At just 23 years old, her name now fills news headlines, causing shock, outrage, and a strong feeling of helplessness. The case has swept the country, taking over the internet, where both users and loved ones of the victim leave their messages of sadness and demand justice. But let me tell you a little about her. Paola Andrea Bañuelos Flores from Mexicali, Baja California, was born into a well-established family. Her parents, Juan Carlos and Mireya, considered her one of their greatest prides, just like their other children. Always striving to provide the best quality of life, this couple took care of providing, caring for, loving, and facilitating studies for their daughter. For her part, the now deceased had inclined her professional career towards the field of mental health at the Faculty of Psychology of the Autonomous University of Baja California. Bearing fruit, all her efforts were supposed to culminate in her graduation in December of the year 2024, which is still some time away. She was a cheerful young woman with many friends, dedicated and very loved by the people around her. She had a beautiful romantic relationship and a group of girls with whom she used to meet to eat, party, and do homework. In summary, as you can see, Paola enjoyed a fairly normal life in which she fortunately had the support of her two parents and siblings.
But believe me, Paola is a good girl. She became a psychologist in December. She, like him, is my pride.
My daughter is a good girl.
She was a homebody, seldom going out.
She was a good student.
With dozens of dreams ahead, the Bañuelos family never imagined the heartbreaking turn their life would take. Far from celebrating a university degree, they would have to officiate a somber funeral. The morning of July 7th of the year 2024 started like any other day. At Paola's house were her mother, her siblings, and her beloved grandmother. She shared some moments of coexistence with the latter, and then suddenly the young woman disappeared. The truth was that she had plans to go out to eat with some friends and her cousin, but she didn't think it was necessary to notify at home that she would be absent for a few hours. Being Sunday, it wasn't strange that she took advantage of the day off to go out and relax.
Because on Sunday she left without permission, without notifying. My mom was here with her lying in bed that same Sunday, around 3 in the afternoon, and without notifying or saying anything, she arranged to eat with her cousin.
Unfortunately, that was the last thing Miss Mireya knew about her daughter, as she did not notice her absence until the next morning when her cousin came to look for her. Realizing that she hadn't come home to sleep was the first alarm to start that fateful search that ended in tragedy. Before leaving home, Paola agreed to meet them at a seafood restaurant called Pez Gallo, which is located in a neighborhood known as Bureaucrat. Naturally, like any girl her age, she proceeded to fix her personal appearance. She put on nice makeup, dressed in black heels, a blouse with black and white stripes, and a grayish-blue skirt. After she combed her hair, she left her home without saying a single word. And it's that no one, when they leave home, believes that they will never see their family again. And unfortunately, this happened to Paola. She was very happy to spend the weekend with her friends, completely ignoring the terrifying future that awaited her once dawn broke. Already at the restaurant, they enjoyed a delicious meal and then started making plans to end the day. Even though it was Sunday and many likely had commitments the next day, they found it easy to decide to go to a club. Considering their age, it's too easy to make this kind of
decisions.
Moreover, just a few months away from their graduation and perhaps with many projects ahead, it was well deserved to have their weekend among music, dance, and a drink or two like any person their age. The place they chose was known by its name as La Consentida. Located in the hotel zone and close by, it appeared to be the best option. From the restaurant, they drove approximately 1.6 kilometers and there they started the party. Being close to home, specifically about 3 kilometers away, they didn't worry too much about leaving there early. Suddenly, midnight caught up with them and the atmosphere was not declining at all. They were undoubtedly having such a good time that when it was 2 in the morning, they were all very surprised at how late it had gotten. Exactly, it is unknown how the friends got home, but as for the Banuelos cousins, one of them was waiting for her father to come for her. However, Paola would not be taken home by her relatives. Instead, she requested a taxi from the Didi app, apparently this being the best option that gave her some security. A few meters away, club staff were witnessing the events. He saw one of the girls leave in a car with her father, and minutes later, the ride-hailing vehicle arrived for the 24-year-old young woman. What he could glimpse from a distance was the model and color of this means of transportation, information he later shared with the police to expedite the search. It was a black Versa. Once the hours passed and there was no more communication with Paola, her cousin began to worry. That's why she went to the family to ask if she had arrived home safely. Unfortunately, the room of the 24-year-old young woman was empty at dawn. Mrs. Mera and Mr. Juan Carlos knew immediately that something was not right. As they had mentioned in interviews, the girl was never known to be problematic, nor did she have differences at home that would make her decide not to return. Much less was she accustomed to not spending the night in her bed without notice. So, with Paola's brother's help, they found her cell phone. It gave an exact location at the corner of the peripheral law, so they thought that maybe it was all a misunderstanding. Unfortunately, it was not so. The device was in the hands of a homeless person who very cooperatively proceeded to tell them that he had found it lying on the pavement. This obviously did not mean good news. So the parents went to the authorities to make the corresponding report. The device was confiscated and the person involved was ruled out as a suspect after the interrogation. Up to that point, the data that was available was extremely scarce.
My daughter apparently catches a black Didi Versa at 2:15, 2:20 in the morning. But she doesn't make it home. She doesn't arrive. They've checked the neighbors' cameras around here, and the Versa was not seen around here by the house. And that's what we know so far.
Along with interviews, social media posts, and images of the missing person, the search notice began to circulate throughout Mexicali, detailing Paola's main characteristics as well as the information known about her up to that point. She was last seen on July 7, 2024. She specifically left from the La Condesa Privada Villalba subdivision in Mexicali, where her mother and grandmother last had contact with her. She was subsequently last seen alive, leaving the aforementioned club located on Boulevard Benito Juarez. In addition, her specific features were also detailed, such as her thin build, a height of 1.57 meters, and shoulder-length hair. In dark brown color, white complexion, slanted brown eyes, and thick eyebrows. While the info was spreading online, the family was eagerly waiting for someone to get in touch to give details about her whereabouts. They also left room for the possibility that the girl was somewhere on her own, upset with her family for some reason. They asked her in front of the cameras to please come back or at least get in touch by some means to say that she was okay. Inevitably, they included in their speech a request to the Didi driver, presumed to have transported her in his car. As painful as this theory may seem, Paola could have been a victim of femicide, deprivation of liberty, or some crime of this nature.
If someone has her, whoever has her, please have mercy on my daughter, on me. I'm desperate now, a day and a half without knowing about her. If you're afraid of something, there are anonymous reports. Please, daughter, and if you're listening, your mother's plea, your siblings, we love you, whatever you've done. We're waiting for you here with open arms. You're a good girl. I know you didn't do anything wrong. I'm sure someone has you out there, and you're going to come back home with me. People who are listening, help me share. My daughter is a good girl.
Pleading fervently for her daughter's return, Mrs. Mireya had very scant information about her whereabouts, as if the earth had swallowed her. She was seen giving one interview after another, always with tears in her eyes, desperate and tirelessly requesting that if anyone had information, they proceed to make an anonymous report. She wanted to find her alive, but as time went by, details began to emerge that pointed towards the worst scenario. For example, the discovery of the infamous black Versa that Paola was seen getting into. Thus, following the investigations, they were able to locate him outside a house located in the Praderas del Sol subdivision. It was deserted with no more information on the lost person. It was then that the image and name of the driver began to become popular on social networks. His identity corresponded to that of Sergio Daniel. He was officially registered on the Didi platform, so his data and his photograph were used as the main suspect. He was also originally from Obregon, Sonora, and immediately became the target of threats and accusations from internet users. Meanwhile, Paola's mother only resorted to a desperate plea for him to turn himself in, or at least come forward, telling the truth. If he took her, where he left her, and if he had her, to cooperate with the authorities.
There's absolutely nothing, no signs at all. Only that this taxi driver, if he has nothing to do with it, should show up, give us a statement, tell us what happened. It's the only way we can also find her, if he tells us whether he dropped her off at home or he didn't. And people, please help us with the search. Have mercy on me. If he has nothing to do with it, he should give his statement. He should approach the prosecutor's office. He should not be afraid. He who owes nothing fears nothing.
By that point in the investigation, search groups had already been deployed in the area where it is presumed the car that was carrying Paola could have gone. The distressed family by that time already feared the worst, with mixed feelings of wanting to know where their loved one was, but fearful to find the vital signs. So it was the morning of Thursday, July 11th. Authorities and volunteers were gathered in an area of Mexicali known as Oasis Campestre. There were plenty of picks and shovels there to make the worst of discoveries. The exact location was just over 20 kilometers away from where the young woman had taken the taxi, sadly, after Mrs. Mera had been filmed by media asking for information. The discovery of a lifeless body attracted the attention of everyone present. It was already in the process of decomposition at this point, however. The suspicions that it was Paola were too much. Her clothing could still be distinguished: a skirt, shorts in a grayish-blue color, and a black and white striped blouse. It was a devastating moment for the family. Despite having ahead the task of lifting the body and the corresponding studies for its official identification and the cause of death, the case practically became a femicide. There were few doubts about this. Meanwhile, the search for the driver became increasingly intense, now as a suspect of femicide. At the time, the authorities were unaware of Sergio Daniel N. was now being threatened and almost forced to tell the truth. He then fled to his native Sonora for fear of being arrested. But the idea of evading justice didn't last long, because on that same July 11th of the year 2024, the suspect himself showed up at the Sonora prosecutor's office, not to turn himself in as such, but to give his version of the events in which he allegedly had nothing to do with the girl's death.
He finally surrendered to the prosecutor's office in Sonora, where an arrest warrant was executed. He will be transferred to Baja California.
I will voluntarily present myself here at the prosecutor's office in Ciudad Obregón because I was in my Cali. I came here out of fear because news was spread and they have not let me defend myself or make a statement, and I came out of fear and I have received several threats. How do I navigate a city where I'm virtually alone and facing threats to my family? I present myself to ensure my family's peace and face any impending trial.
Once the main suspect was taken into custody, he was made available to the Attorney General's Office of the State of Sonora and the Criminal Investigation Agency to initiate the process corresponding to his transfer to Baja California. With his arrival, some data began to leak through social networks and media outlets. These pointed to the possibility that two other people were involved in the case, of whom Sergio Daniel Gutierrez, 24 years old, demanded their arrest. This was for his own safety, as revealing the whole truth could put his life at risk. I'll face it, I swear, but I want you to investigate Lyrico One and Jacob Silva. He posted this on his social media before his arrest. However, the so-called Lyrico One, being an up-and-coming rapper, had no problem coming out to deny the information, even assuring that people will have to apologize to him when everything is cleared up. On the other hand, and due to the great impact that the case took, the Didi platform spoke out about it not showing their filters or processes for someone to become a driver of the application, but only to not appear indifferent to such events. And this is what they said. We express our deepest condolences to family and friends for the sensitive passing of Paola Andrea. We strongly condemn these events. This is what they wrote in a statement referring to the young woman's death as a passing and not as it
truly
was, that is, a homicide. This statement opened up a small debate about the simple way in which anyone can be part of the company. As for the driver Sergio Daniel, he actually already had a quite murky past, having at the time of the crime even an arrest warrant for domestic violence. Unfortunately, the scant security filters opened the doors for him extremely easily, completely ignoring his episodes of aggression towards his ex-partners and his mother. Similarly, and on this same topic, while also expressing condolences to the affected family, the governor of Baja California, Marina del Pilar, urged these types of transportation apps to proceed with a more exhaustive or detailed evaluation regarding users who apply as drivers, making it known that she had already instructed the Secretary of Citizen Security and the State Sustainable Mobility Institute to immediately implement a scheme for the exhaustive evaluation and supervision of the profiles of digital transportation platform drivers. But unfortunately, for this important issue to be paid attention to, a young woman had to lose her life. Like a puzzle, the terrible nightmare that Paola had to go through before her horrifying death was slowly pieced together. On one hand, the information provided by the main suspect, while on the other, the official confirmation from the body, although there was never any doubt that it was her. This needs to be made clear, but even with that certainty, the authorities were obliged to come out and deliver the news as it should be.
And just like the clothes, the attire she was wearing the day she disappeared when she got into a vehicle from the Didi platform.
After the identification of the body and the forensic examinations, it was concluded that unfortunately this young girl suffered from intimate abuse as well as blows to her body, mainly on her arms, abdomen, and neck. As for the cause of death, it turned out to be asphyxiation due to strangulation. Finally, after just under a week of anguish, the family of the deceased knew the ordeal she had gone through. They never imagined that the name of Paola Andrea would be one of those on those painful banners held high during a march where justice is demanded. On the other hand, and at least within the tragedy, Sergio Gutierrez is in preventive detention, who fortunately to this day has the attention of the authorities in Baja California, which we hope will bring down the full weight of the law. as his personality describes him as a violent individual capable of intimidating his own family. Our investigations point to him as a presumed responsible for these terrible events, who, when cornered and without an exit, chose to surrender to justice as a last resort. The prosecutor's office gathered evidence that points to the detainee as a violent and aggressive person to the point of attacking his own family members, including his own mother, and putting his victims at risk. This is what the head of the Baja California State Attorney General's office, Maria Elena Andrade Ramirez, said. However, that was not the only topic the prosecutor addressed, as she made a series of comments that sparked a certain degree of outrage among social media users, also paving the way for a controversy that is undoubtedly far from over. This is in regards to the well-known re-victimization, as the old discourse of not going out alone, or in this case not traveling alone, continues to be used, in which a certain amount of responsibility is somewhat placed on what could happen to them if they do. I think it definitely alerts us as parents to be vigilant, and as friends and community to ensure that young girls do not travel alone for whatever reason they may have to go out. Definitely, even if they are platform vehicles. As you can see, these were the words of the prosecutor, which in a way, as I tell you, blames the victim. But well, as it is a painful custom nowadays, the streets of Mexicali did not take long to fill with demonstrations to cry out for justice. In these marches, it is very common to see women who have gone through a similar situation and have their daughters listed as missing. That's why the feeling of empathy has achieved this unity, where people go out with their banners to assert their freedom of expression, especially in giving voice to those women who have lost their lives in similar circumstances.
It was the state! 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 What has the government responded? Cover-ups. As always, right?
Because they don't have enough evidence to arrest a suspect, because they are investigating.
We are already tired.
We are already tired of so much impunity.
This woman, who had a close friendship with Paola, could not help but contain her anger considering the unfortunate situation. She spoke of her friend's dreams, of her cut-off life, and her desire to see the guilty party or parties behind bars. There were several protests that took place nationwide before the news of the main suspect's connection to the process was released, who happens to be the Didi driver, Sergio Gutierrez, impressively speeding up the entire legal protocol. The crimes attributed to this individual correspond to those of forced disappearance and femicide, which was made known through a hearing that the victim's family allegedly could not attend because it coincided with the day of the final farewell, that is, the funeral services of Miss Paola Andrea. In the room where the defendant can be seen in the characteristic orange suit, it was also said that a 6-month period would be open to carry out the corresponding investigations and gather the necessary evidence to prove his guilt. Naturally, he has been placed in preventive detention, where he will remain until the months of investigation closure indicated by the judge have been completed, who during the hearing spoke directly to the accused to say a few words. Even though you are detained, you have a blessing, you breathe, and young Paola does not.